This work was done by the Clarity team at OpenAI, and the idea behind the work is to get a deeper insight into what neural networks do and why they do what they do. So the thing is, they are trying out to they are trying to define a new field of inquiry into these universal function approximators. And this is one of the initial papers which defines their goal and vision for this paradigm. Uh, so, uh, uh, so the first question which naturally arises is that why we are doing this and what is wrong with current interpretability methods and why we need to, uh, look into all whatever an individual neuron is doing, because currently we have very deep models with billions of neurons in every network. So is it worth investing our time into these individual neurons? So why should we do that? So the first thing is that whenever we are building complicated system, we need to have an insight into each scale of operation. So, and we have been doing this since basically science began. So, so if we take example of physics, so we have at an observable scale, we have classical mechanics, and then if we go down, all the interactions of classical mechanics can be converted into exchanges of basically bosons, and which is studied at a different scale with all the quantum electrodynamics, Feynman diagrams and stuff. And then there is a zoomed out version, which basically relates every type of interaction with geometry and the curvature of space-time. And if we look for an example closer home, so in 3D computer graphics, we have different areas, different fields of people, different groups of people working specifically on these individual curves, which then combine together to form shapes. And then there is an entire field of scene understanding, which just works at the abstraction of shapes. And then zooming out from these scenes, we have subspaces and manifolds. And then there is an entire group of people working on that. So to understand a complicated system, like we need to have an understanding of uh, the scales of operation and at what are the things that are going on at every scale. So that's the idea, that's the intuition behind this new area. And basically they are trying to define metrics, and they are trying to define the objects of inquiry here. Whenever we start a new scientific paradigm, we want to answer like what are the objects which we want to operate on. So here for instance, in graphics, we have either we can operate on curves or surfaces or objects. So similarly, they are trying to operate at the scale of a neuron or a group of neurons. And the tool that which they are using to study the neuron is feature visualization. So what they do is, so they basically try to assign a pseudo representation to a neuron. So for them, so for typically a neuron is a collection of weights. Basically, whatever inputs we give to a neuron, does some linear combination and applies some nonlinearity activation function, and that's what a neuron is. So they are applying a pseudo variable to this neuron, and which they call feature visualization. So they represent each neuron as an image which gives the maximum activation to that neuron. So uh, uh, in this image, if you see the second row leftmost image, so this is the image representing neuron from layer n, and XYZ are the coordinates of that neuron. And basically how they create this image is that you start with a random image and you try to optimize for highest activation of that particular neuron. So you keep on applying gradient descent until you get an image for which the activation of neuron is 1. And when you get that image, that becomes basically an approximation of whatever the neuron is doing. So that's how they represent a neuron. And essentially, there are various caveats to representing neurons. Some diversification of their representations and all those kinds of things are there. But the main thing is they use these optimized, highly optimized images to study the neurons. And they obtain those images by starting out with a random image and optimizing the image for the maximum activation for that particular neuron. The same can be done for a layer or a group of layers or subgraphs of the neuron. So that's basically the idea of how they reason about particular neurons. So from now on, I will just go to their article and I will try to describe what they are doing and what are the basic insights from their investigation into neurons. So if you have any if something is unclear, please feel free to interrupt me in between. So they start out by laying out three claims that they want to investigate these three properties and whether these properties exist for all the neural networks or not. So the first claim which they put forth is that the fundamental unit of operation of a neural network is a feature. So you can consider feature as an individual neuron or basically as a collection of neurons. So as a linear combination of neurons. So each feature is defined as a single neuron or a linear combination of neurons within a single layer. So you can consider these features as direction vectors in the in a high dimensional space whose basis is the neurons. So basically, for simplicity, I will refer to each neuron as individual feature. And then the second claim is that these features combined together form circuits. Basically, circuits can be seen as subgraphs of neurons. And they say that their claim is that we can derive useful algorithms by inspecting those circuits. And the third claim is the universality claim, which says that no matter what task we are doing or no matter what model we are training, these circuits and these features and the circuits which use those features will eventually develop in all those algorithms. These are the three claims which they try to explore in this paper. So and they give justification as to why they think these might be true. So the first claim, second. So this might be familiar to those who have read articles about feature representations or papers about feature representations. So they are giving examples. So these are the examples of why we think that each neuron must consist of a useful feature, a human interpretable feature. So the first example is the example of these curve detectors. So each of these square images represents a neuron. And at the bottom, you can see the location of that neuron. So they are basically trying to dissect the Inception V1 network, which was or the Google Net. It is popularly known as Google Net, and that was an earlier vision network. And it had relatively less number of layers. I can just show you the basically the network which they are trying to understand, and then just give me a second. So yeah, this is the layer this is the neural network which they are trying to dissect. So it has basically these important convolutional layers on which they are carrying out their experiments. So all these layers are separated by max pooling layers, and basically they are only investigating convolutional layers. So these 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, 4E are names of those convolutional layers. and basically they are in lexicographical order. They appear in lexicographical order. So if we look at the 379th neuron from layer 3B, this is what is said here at the lower side. So you can see that the image which we found out by optimizing by feature visualization or optimizing for its activation forms this. Like this is the image which gives it the maximum activations. And basically, uh, uh, you can see these kinds of uh, images for almost all the neurons in that particular layer, which promotes the idea that each neuron might be giving something useful to them or something human interpretable. It might be containing something human interpretable. So they investigate curve detectors, which are an important link between uh, features which are accepted in the vision community. So vision community is basically accepts that features like edge detection exist, but they are skeptical about accepting higher level features like faces and those kinds of things. So that's why they began their exploration with understanding curve detectors. So you can see that there are pretty interesting things in these curve detectors. So one of the things is that they are not only excited by the curves, but they are also excited by lines perpendicular to those curves. And they are always found within the same layers and within different rotations. So the most important thing is that they span the entire circle. So if you consider all the neurons from the layer 3B, you can see that all of these curve detectors are in a different orientation, different rotation. So essentially, we can argue that what that layer is trying to do is just trying to predict some related shape which are given on the right, and it is doing that by predicting these curves in all possible orientation. So another possibility is that what if we are hallucinating all those things, and basically they can be excited by other things, and we because as we humans like to find patterns in images, and that's why we are trying to we are finding we are extracting meaning from something which is meaningless. So to justify this claim, they give 7 arguments. So the first argument is that this is a causal loop. Since we tried to find out these images by optimizing for that particular neuron, so that's why we are essentially closing a causal loop within the training and the image generation process. The second argument is that if we find out examples from data set for a particular neuron, for a particular curve detector, we would find that only those examples excite the neuron the most, which are in the same orientation. So these 4 images are basically the images from ImageNet, which excited the neuron the most, and it resembled what our feature visualization process gave us. The third argument is that even if we draw synthetic shapes, we don't pick anything from the data set, or we don't do feature visualization, and we try to create our own synthetic examples. They also excite the neuron the most. The neurons have a high excitation only in the similar orientation. The next thing is, which would be visible in a better visualization. So the next argument which they gave is that, so we are looking at the same neuron. So when you try to rotate your synthetic image, so this is the graph of the activation of the neuron versus the orientation of that synthetic image which you gave it. So the thing I was trying to say is that these curve detectors are doing what these curve detectors are actually detecting curves, because this experiment which they do shows that within a single layer, they can find neurons which cover the entirety of a circle. So these are neurons which belong to layer 3A of the network, and they are basically spanning the entire circle. So the network is deliberately trying to learn curves in all sorts of orientations. So this is also an argument supporting the fact that they are indeed detecting curves, and we are not finding out meanings in something which is meaningless. The next evidence for this is from the circuits argument. So basically, the next argument is that. So for that, let me give you a definition of what circuits are. Uh, yeah. So consider this image. So this image, on the left and right hand side, we have two neurons, and basically they are connected by a 5 cross 5 convolutional field. So this is what these are the weights of the convolutional kernel, which goes through which connects basically these two neurons. So if we plot the weights of this 5 cross 5 convolutional network, so these are the weights plotted in the convolutional network, and basically the red weights represent positive weights, and the bluish color represents negative weights. So if we connect a curve detector neuron in a higher level to a curve detector neuron in a lower level and try to inspect what their connecting kernel looks like, so we would find that the weights also arrange themselves in a similar orientation as of curve circuits. This can be seen for all types of orientation. So you can see that these two curves have a similar orientation, and so do their weights for all sorts of orientations. So this also gives us an idea that, yeah, this is actually predicting what we are thinking it is predicting. So these are
Now,
all.
Samagna, will you take questions now or
Yeah.
later?
You can interpret me anytime.
Yeah.
Interrupt me anytime. Yes. Sorry.
Uh, yeah. Okay. So, I mean, these images were produced from maximizing the activations, right?
Yeah.
So obviously the weights have to look like these. Otherwise, the images won't turn out to be like these.
Uh, so we are trying to plot the connection between these two. So this image. So the images on the left is produced by optimizing a neuron for a particular neuron in the left, and the image in the right is for a different neuron, and we are basically trying to uh, see whether the weights connecting these neurons give us a particular algorithm. So these middle images are the weights. Um,
So these two neurons are from the same layer or these are from the different layer?
different layers. So
Okay.
and
And
the middle image is the convolutional kernel connecting those two images.
a convolution kernel connecting those two
Two
images,
neurons.
two
Neurons.
neurons. Okay.
Yes.
Uh, how do you, that is a bit hard to visualize. How are you actually calculating that? Because a, a neuron, in a way, i- what you are saying, a neuron is actually a activation basically. And that activation is coming from whatever kernel is there for that particular layer. Now, how are you drawing this new kernel in between the two?
So when you go from a particular layer to another layer, there is a convolutional kernel which operates on them, right?
Right.
So basically, if I have layer one and I have layer two, I pick a layer one neuron,
Hmm.
okay, and I pick one neuron from layer one and I pick another neuron from layer two, and basically I try to find the kernel which calculates layer two neurons from layer one. So these 5x5 kernel will operate on layer 1 to give
Okay.
me layer 2, and each neuron in layer 2 will have its own 5x5 kernel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And basically, I'm trying to find out like what I'm plotting here the layer two's kernel, that particular neuron's kernel. Like what does it look like?
Samagra, my question was that if you
Yeah,
see on the image on the right, the neuron on the right, the image basically represents the the input which would maximize the activation for that particular neuron, correct?
neuron. Yeah, right.
Uh, the maximum uh, activation you will get is from multiplication with the weights,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
obviously, if you are showing a circle, I mean, if the output is like a circle, then the weights have to correspond to a circle, right? Otherwise, that circle will not. Uh, so you see my point. Image, the two boxes are correlated. It's not
The,
as if.
yeah, the two boxes are correlated, and they are correlated using a certain convolutional kernel. And we are trying to figure out like what algorithm that convolutional kernel implements. And this is easier to see in the case of curve detectors. But as we will move further, I will show you some other convolutional kernels as well. So the claim which I'm trying to justify is that we can read algorithms from these circuits. And this algorithm is visible right now in this convolutional kernel easily because we can see the curves. But when,
Fair enough.
let's say, I'll give you an example here. Let's say, yeah, this example. So on the left hand side, there is a dog in a dog head in a certain orientation, and the right hand side neuron is trying to predict a dog and a neck in a certain orientation. So so what they are trying to do is trying to figure out like how what exactly is the convolutional layer doing in between to give out this representation, and can we interpret that convolutional layer by just reading off from the weights. The ultimate goal here is to hand design these convolutional layers. Can we better hand design these convolutional layers, these middle layers, to design custom algorithms instead of learned ones? Have I made myself clear, Mayur?
Sorry, I was muted. Um, yeah, yeah, it's fine. The other question I had was, are these images unique?
Uh, a good question. No, they have a diversity term which they try to They have an entire algorithm which in some older paper with which they try to generate these images corresponding to a particular neuron. And I'll come in the next few minutes. I will come to some neurons called polysemantic neurons, which what they actually do is combine multiple concepts together. So they have a diversification algorithm of diversifying what exactly a neuron is seeing. And even after applying that diversification, these initial curve detectors usually give similar images, whereas the later layers, which combine those features, give different types of images. So I'll come to that soon.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, any other questions? Okay. So these curve detectors are a feature which has been in the computer vision community for quite long, and this is how we basically detect edges. But there are some unintuitive features which also came out of this exercise, and I'll just go to them right now. So not only does InceptionNet uses those curve detectors for detecting edges, but there is another family called high-low frequency detectors, which are helpful in detecting edges. And this is not usually used in the computer vision community in the traditional sense when we used to design the kernels by hand. So we didn't have a notion of low high frequency detectors and that they can be useful for detecting edges. But inspecting InceptionNet, we have come up with a new sort of feature, a new feature, a new way of detecting edges, and that is the high-low frequency detectors. And they look for frequency patterns on one side, like the one side has higher frequency signals and the other side has lower frequency signals, and that is how they detect edges. And they also span the entire circle, entire 360-degree of orientations. So this was one interesting find, that there are some unintuitive features which can be brought into the in the which can be added to the human abstractions, like human way of understanding things. So this was one interesting thing they found out. And so these features are very low level features, and curve detectors and high low frequency detectors which occur at the initial few layers of our convolutional neural network. So then they set out to find out that do these features also exist in the higher layers, in the near end layers of the InceptionNet. And they found out a very interesting feature called pose invariant dog detector. So what it does is it detects dog faces in all different orientations. So that was the uh, neuron in the 4B layer. So it is not possible to describe what geometry it is detecting, but with feature visualization, we can have a sense of what exactly it looking for. So this particular neuron is basically trying to detect dogs in all different sort of orientations. So that was one interesting that justifies that features also exist in the higher levels and not only in the lower layers of InceptionNet.
So
So
again, sorry, again, this is uh, not a proof of the fact that features exist in these dimensions, because these images are not unique. Because also what is potentially possible is that the features captured are actually much lesser, a smaller subset of what we are seeing, and the rest of the pixels are only incidental.
yeah, so to that end, like they have a diverse. So for that again, like in feature
Mayur, can you
visualization paper.
explain what you mean? Because the particular neuron here has been generated by propagating the gradients. So exactly what are you pointing at? I was not able to follow
So
what
I'm
you said.
saying that if you treat the whole thing as a function that you are maximizing, or
The neuron, okay,
the
okay.
neuron, right? The whole thing as a nonlinear function,
Uh,
then you are essentially sitting in some sort of a local minimum
local
for,
maximum, or yeah.
sorry, local maximum, yeah, local
Uh,
maximum for that neuron. It's
right,
not a
right.
global maximum because it's not unique.
It need not be. Okay, yes, I agree. So,
So so uh, uh, so it is possible that only a small portion of this image is actually causing the neuron to be high in activation, and the rest of the pixels in this image are incidental, like they're generated.
okay, 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 okay. So, okay, to counter that argument, do you think if you do it for a lot of random, no starting with a lot of different type of random noise,
Mm.
uh,
That would be at least, yeah,
then
slightly
you would
better
kind of get a sense, ki,
evidence.
okay, this is the variation, this is what is common between all of them.
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, so this is the technique which they use, and basically they have an entire section on how to diversify those images. So they generate multiple images, multiple visualization, and basically when they say a feature, they have detected the same kind of features along all diversity terms, like all diversified images which they generate. So this is a really big paper, and the diversity section is also very big. I'll link to it. I'll give you a link to it. So
What would be interesting is if you could do, if one could do an ablation on the pixels, like basically identify which pixels amount to the same maximum value, or maybe even something like arrive at the minimum number of pixels required to obtain the same maximum value.
same activation. Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to do. Right. So till now, like the examples which are presented have a single
That will
feature.
find adversarial examples, I think.
Yeah, so adversarial examples. So as I have shown here, like as I showed you earlier, where was that image? Yeah. So basically, if you look at how, so these blue dots are basically representing negative activations, or basically they are trying to inhibit the neuron from firing. So a curve detector at a particular orientation tries to tries to suppress a curve in another orientation. It can be seen from plotting the weights of that convolutional their convolutional kernel. So let's say this was neuron 1. Okay. So let's look at the first layer only. Okay. So essentially this neuron. अरे यार. So yeah. So every neuron will be connected to every other neuron with a certain convolutional kernel, right? So when we compare two neurons having the same orientation, they will be connected with a set of weights which is actually uh, promoting the activation in the same orientation. But if you try to connect that particular neuron with some other neuron in a different orientation, then it would try to suppress the same direction. That can be seen
Yeah,
from the
makes
weights
sense.
here.
It makes sense. Yes.
So yeah, so till now we have seen that there are certain neurons which give us certain good features, but that's not always the case. There are some polysemantic neurons which basically pack up multiple things within themselves. So these three images represent the activation of a same neuron, which is neuron 55 from layer 4E, and basically it responds to cat faces, fronts of cars, and cat legs. And basically these three different types of images were generated using all the diversity algorithms which they have in
Yeah.
another paper,
This
that
is the
how to
answer to the
get those
Mayur's
diversity
question,
images.
I guess.
Yeah. So this is this is how they diversify their input. And yeah, so they also go into, so this is just the introduction paper which we are discussing. There are like 6 more successive papers in which they go into details like why these neurons exist, and like why are they combining everything together into a particular neuron. We will, I'll give one more reference to this example later on, but yeah, so there exist certain neurons which don't have just a single human interpretable feature, but a combination of features which can be interpreted, which are human interpretable. Yeah.
Do
So
they
the second,
also discuss the um, interactions between neurons? I mean, not
yeah,
interaction, I would say uh, correlations between neurons in the same layer.
correlation between neurons in the yeah. So correlation in the
Okay, so what I meant is there
something like this.
any kind of locality? Not exactly like this. Like for example, these are all convolutional layers. So do they have like uh, would adjacent neurons?
Okay.
Uh, how should we say adjacent? Basically, if you are doing a 256 channel thing, then two adjacent on the stack, you'd have two adjacent layers, right?
Yeah.
Two adjacent neurons.
Yeah.
So do they have any locality in the local similarity in their thing,
So so
in their
these
weights?
so these okay, yeah, let's see. So let's try to answer your question. So these all neurons belong to the same layer. Okay. And if I click on this, it would basically give me uh yeah, they have a very detailed uh okay, one second. So basically this is shown by this diagram, I guess. One second. Yeah. So these all four neurons belong to the same layer simultaneously, right? And these are their weights, which have simultaneous direction. So by similarity, you mean this, like adjacent neurons in a similar layer have similar kinds of weight structures. Is that what you are trying to?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So these all four neurons belong to the same layer, and they have a similar weight structure, you can say, in terms of similarity, but the orientation is different. You can see that here.
So maybe you will answer this later on, but basically what I meant was, uh, like if I took uh, two instances of Inception V1,
Yeah,
okay, and looked at the weights of the same layers,
yeah,
okay, say layer 3B for both networks,
yeah.
then will I find a correlation between the sequences of weights?
Between the sequences of weights. Okay. So you're trying to pin that a particular neuron will always learn a same feature. That.
Yeah, so
I think
I
rather than neuron, maybe
or some permutation of it.
a layer would learn the same feature.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Could
That.
possibly.
So that is the third claim, which is called the universality claim. And basically, not even the two different versions of InceptionNet, but we do this across entirely different models. And we come across similar curve detectors. So the first line belongs to LXNet, the second line Inception V1, the third is VGG, and the fourth is ResNet. So these are all families of curve detectors and high-low frequency detectors. And
ResNet
they,
is significantly different.
yeah,
ResNet seems to have this high-low kind of thing that you were talking about.
yeah, involved within it. Yeah. But essentially, they serve the edge detection purpose. That's how they claim it. So this claim can not always be true, and they claim that this could just be a data correlation thing, that uh, things trained on ImageNet require curve detection. So
I
yeah,
mean, one could just test it
रेजनेट
by.
आर्किटेक्चर की वजह से हुआ होगा, राइट मयूर?
हाँ हाँ
Because वो
बिल्कुल
रेजिडुअल है, that is will have a different kind of effect.
बिल्कुल. So I mean, one easy way to test the hypothesis is if the kind of feature detectors we are seeing in terms of the kernels, if we just materialize the hypothesis, like we are saying that this particular neuron gets activated because it has to detect a certain kind of curve, then we actually replace the kernel with a kernel which will do exactly that.
yeah. Okay, good question. So yeah, so they have created an entire thing with hand.
Oh, okay, great,
So
perfect.
this curve circuits paper, this is the fourth paper in the series. So they claim to have gotten certain accuracy with hand, like it is a very long thing. So what they did was they created all those layers, so not the higher layers but the lower layers, and all these kernels with hand, and then they replaced them in the original network. And then they have those accuracy results as well here. So
Perfect.
they did this here. So this thread is essentially how many papers? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 papers. So they are doing all these permutation combination sort of things.
Very
So yeah,
nice.
yeah. So that was so that was a polysemantic neuron, right? Yeah. So these are the polysemantic neurons. Then we saw the uh, circuits. So what a circuit is? A circuit is essentially a subgraph of the original network, basically a subgraph. And they are trying to find out the algorithms which propagate throughout the entire network. So the curve detector, one example we already saw. So now let's look at uh, oriented head detection circuit. So this is a circuit. This is a basically a circuit which expands multiple layers. So it starts at 3B, which you can see here, and it ends at 4C. And we do this for all the neurons in the subsequent layers. And we found out that the 3B layers first detect the dog face in both the orientation. So, uh, so this upper figure is a dog facing left, and the lower figure is a dog facing right. And then these red lines and blue lines are basically a representation of their kernels. So red lines are activating kernels, and blue lines are inhibition kernels. And basically, uh, in the next layer, these features were used to detect oriented heads. So initially they were detecting oriented fur, then they detected oriented heads, and basically the oriented fur in opposite direction was trying to inhibit the oriented head in other direction. This they found out from the from the kernel weights. This was further carried out to combine with neck, like the oriented detection of neck, and then in the next layer. So this happened at layer 3B. The second thing happened at layer 4A, and then in the later layers, these was combined to calculate a orientation invariant head detector. Now, this is interesting because basically all this was done by gradient descent, which we didn't ask it to, bring out these interpretable features, or all this thing, these rotational invariants could have been captured within a single neuron. It didn't have to make two separate pathways, which are symmetric in all ways except orientation, and then combine them at a later stage. So this is an interesting question to think over, that why gradient descent does something like this. So this is the idea behind circuits, that circuits are a group of neurons, and they try to figure out like what is happening, what algorithm the weights of that particular CNN is trying to implement over these features.
That's
So
like a information bottleneck thing because basically as you're shrinking the amount of information that can be uh, you know passed on. I mean, the
yeah,
higher level neuron will require for the dog class, it will require all the orientation, identify all the orientations,
yeah, exactly, right,
right?
right,
So
right.
therefore, I mean, previously, I mean, the lower layers, it would have I mean, it's easier to disperse it to different neurons, and later on, it's harder. So the efficient thing is to combine them.
So the thing is that uh, it could have built this. So if you see the 4B neurons, it could have built this kind of detection within some 3B layer itself, right? It could have done those weights kind of thing
So
within.
3B might have many more uh, neurons, right? While 4B would have like the map size would continuously reduce.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is why.
Okay, okay, yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, basically, and yeah, so this is another example of a circuit and how we can read weights from the convolutional kernel. So, what this neuron is trying to detect cars, basically, and if you see the activation kernels, if you plot the weights of the kernels, you can see that the top kernel tries to detect the windows by basically activating the neuron for the upper half of the image. The second basically has red weights throughout. There is not a single blue weight. So it is trying to detect the body of the car. And basically, the lower kernel has red weights at the bottom, and which is connected to a neuron which identifies wheels. So basically, it is trying to detect the wheel part of the car. And basically, they all three combine together to form a car detector in a higher layer. Now, the thing with higher layer is now the interesting thing that they observed here is that it got a representation of car in a particular neuron, but in the next layer, it distributed that representation across other neurons which were doing different things. So these were dog detector neurons, and it dispersed this car detection thing over all these three neurons. So basically, the polysemantic neurons which we encountered earlier, which captured multiple facets of different things, are a deliberate thing to you know uh, to accommodate small number of neurons and detect large number of things, as Mayur said. So they give the same explanation that the information bottleneck makes it distribute these functions to different dog detecting neurons. So this is also a
Does
question
this
which the
mean, let's say you
yeah,
do this for a network and you figure
yeah,
out what are these polysemantic neurons, and you
yeah.
kind of
Disentangle.
not exactly disentangle, but I would say pawn, though it is not as simple as what I am going to state now, but pawn kind of another set of neurons,
Yeah.
it would be hard, which would kind of take its place. So,
Yeah, you are going in the direction of creating hand designed neural
yeah,
networks, right? Yeah,
so
go on. Sorry.
I was trying to basically figure out that if these neurons are becoming polysemantic, then probably this is giving us that where the bottleneck of the network is, and maybe if we add more neurons in that particular layer in some way, then the accuracy in fact would get affected of the network because it will get more capacity where it needs it.
Yeah,
This
right,
kind of
right.
shows in a way that there it is capacity limited in these areas. So if we add more branches in the neural layer, maybe more
Yeah,
branches in that layer, only for that layer in
yeah.
parallel, then it could probably use them better to do a much, yeah,
Improve the accuracy.
improve the
Yeah.
accuracy.
Right. Yeah. So this is a good idea to explore, and maybe we can do this in DPS, some sort of thing. But yeah, it would require us to go do this for every neuron, which sounds like
If
which
we have an automated way of doing this,
this right. Yeah. They have built a, a TensorFlow 1 supported framework which just works on TF1 right
mhm,
now called Lucid, which does all these things for every neuron.
and
I'll
we
include this
have
in them.
kind of, so what we need is in a way, we need a network and we need let's say it's just a simple ResNet or what a normal convolution net, and for each layer we have additional parallel layers which are lurking around but not activated in the first, let's say, first few epochs. Once the first few epochs training end, you try to figure out where are these polysemantic neurons and what are the dense areas where there are polysemantic neurons. And for those areas, those layers, you activate the other parallel branches for that particular layer and train it again. uh, Maybe it will start finding. Basically, you can expand your network in such a fashion. I was just
Yeah, yeah.
keep
So
expanding your network, basically.
that's predict the uh, subgraphs from the networks. And then there is universality claim, which I think we all already discussed, that they found similar patterns in all the networks. And essentially, they have developed. So if anybody is interested or anybody is excited by this, so they can go to OpenAI Microscope, where they have done this for all the networks. Basically, you can see this thing. You can explore it, every neuron and everything. They have these maps for everything. And basically, you can go ahead and see out what everything is predicting. They have currently Inception, VGG, ResNet, for every, so they have done this for everything. So these are some interesting things which can be done. Another things that they so just to give you a brief overview of what they are doing right now. So they did this for curve detectors, and basically it was just a beginning. So basically what they are now doing is they they are trying to build a taxonomy of features, high level as well as low level features, and their ultimate aim is to build a taxonomy for circuits instead of neural networks. So basically you have these curve detectors, very robust curve detectors, and very robust, say, uh, frequency detectors, and then you can maybe plug and play with them without spending your time in training. So that's the ultimate aim, and that's what they have been exploring. So they have done this for 2D vision. They are already doing. In uh, so the yeah that's all. That's all from my side. So any other questions, like anything else which anybody else wants to discuss?
So one thing I wanted to ask was, does the um, optimization procedure affect the evolution of these neurons in any way?
Yeah, so they have not explored this yet, but yeah, they are conducting experiments to see how these features evolve while training. So you are asking about training, while training, how do these
Yeah,
evolve, like combining different optimizers, how does that work? So yeah, that's an under investigation right now.
I see.
Yeah, so I have written also this in one of the questions, like how do these